The soft thud of Scarlett Brooks' worn sneakers echoed through the marble corridor as she clutched her cleaning supplies cart with trembling hands. Her golden blonde curls, tied back in a practical ponytail, caught the early morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 52nd floor. It was Monday, 6:30 a.m., and she always arrived early to clean the executive offices before the powerful men in $1,000 suits claimed their territories for another day of million-dollar deals. But today was different. Today she carried a secret that could change everything. The Sterling Financial Tower pierced the Manhattan skyline like a gleaming sword, its glass and steel facade reflecting the amber glow of sunrise. Scarlett had worked here for 3 years as part of the night cleaning crew, invisible to the titans of Wall Street who moved billions with a single phone call. She knew every corner of this building, every hidden alcove, every whispered conversation that echoed through conference rooms after hours. Especially the conversations about Cameron Sterling himself. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she stood before the imposing mahogany double doors that led to the CEO's private office. Behind those doors lay a world of Italian leather, crystal decanters, and oil paintings worth more than her entire neighborhood in Queens. More importantly, behind those doors was the man whose life she was about to turn upside down. Last Friday night, while emptying the waste paper basket in his office, she had accidentally knocked over a stack of files. As she scrambled to collect the scattered documents, one particular folder had fallen open, revealing photographs and legal documents that made her blood run cold. Her hands had shaken as she read the private investigator's report detailing Cameron Sterling's desperate search for his younger sister, a sister who had disappeared 25 years ago when their family's fortune was torn apart by scandal. A sister named Sarah Sterling, who had been placed in foster care and eventually adopted by the Brooks family in Queens. A sister who was now standing outside his office door, wearing a faded cleaning uniform and sneakers with holes in them. Scarlett closed her ocean blue eyes, feeling the weight of the truth crushing down on her small shoulders. She thought about the recurring nightmares that had plagued her since childhood. Fragmented memories of a big house, a kind older brother who used to read her stories, and the terrible day when men in dark suits came to take her away. She thought about the birthmark shaped like a crescent moon on her left wrist, the same mark she had glimpsed in the family photographs scattered across Cameron's desk. The sound of the elevator chiming made her jump. He was coming up early today, something he never did on Mondays. Her pulse quickened as she heard his distinctive footsteps approaching, the confident stride of a man who owned half of Manhattan and commanded respect from world leaders. Cameron Sterling was 32 years old, devastatingly handsome with dark hair and piercing green eyes that had graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune magazines. He was worth $2 billion, dated supermodels and socialites, and lived in a penthouse that overlooked Central Park. He was also, according to the documents hidden in her apartment, the brother who had never stopped looking for her. "You're here early," came his deep velvet voice from behind her. Scarlett spun around, her cleaning cart rattling slightly. There he stood in all his magnetic glory, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his emerald eyes sharp and intelligent, and his strong jawline could have been carved by Michelangelo himself. Even at this ungodly hour, he looked like he had stepped off the cover of GQ magazine. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Something flickered in his eyes, a recognition that went deeper than the casual acknowledgement between employer and employee. His brow furrowed slightly as if he was trying to solve a puzzle that had been haunting him for years. I always start early on Mondays, Mr. Sterling," she managed to whisper, her voice betraying the earthquake happening inside her chest. "I didn't expect you to be here so soon." His gaze traveled over her face, lingering on her eyes with an intensity that made her knees weak. "Have we met before?" he asked quietly, stepping closer. "I mean outside of work?" The question hung in the air between them like a loaded gun. This was it, the moment she had been dreading and anticipating for 3 sleepless nights. She could continue living her lie, cleaning his office while he searched desperately for a sister who stood right in front of him every day. Or she could tell him the truth and watch both their worlds explode. Scarlett reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small, faded photograph, the only memento she had from her childhood. It showed two children, a dark-haired boy of about 7, holding the hand of a blonde toddler with bright blue eyes. Written on the back in a child's handwriting were the words, "Cameron and Sarah, best friends forever." "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice barely above a whisper as she held out the photograph with a trembling hand. I think I'm the sister you've been looking for." The photograph fluttered to the marble floor as Cameron Sterling, the man who never showed emotion, who commanded boardrooms and crushed competitors without blinking, stared at her with eyes that suddenly filled with 25 years of grief, hope, and recognition. "Sarah," he breathed, and in that single word, Scarlett heard the echo of the big brother who used to chase away her nightmares and promise her that everything would be okay. The cleaning cart stood forgotten between them as the first rays of sunlight painted the corridor in shades of gold, illuminating two souls who had found each other against all odds in the heart of Manhattan's concrete jungle. The photograph lay between them on the pristine marble floor like a bridge spanning 25 years of separation. Cameron Sterling's hands trembled as he knelt to pick it up, his usually composed demeanor completely shattered. The powerful CEO who had never shown weakness in front of anyone was now fighting back tears in a corporate hallway at 7 in the morning. "This is impossible," he whispered, studying the faded image with the reverence of a man holding the Holy Grail. His emerald eyes darted between the photograph and Scarlett's face, searching for proof that this wasn't some cruel joke orchestrated by his enemies. "Sarah died in the car accident. The social workers told me." "They lied," Scarlett interrupted softly, her voice gaining strength despite her racing heart. "I remember fragments, the big house with the white columns, you reading me stories about princesses and dragons, the way you used to sneak cookies from the kitchen and share them with me in the garden." Cameron's breath caught. Those were details no one else could know. He rose slowly, his 6'2" frame towering over her petite figure, but instead of intimidation, his presence radiated pure wonder mixed with devastating vulnerability. "The garden," he repeated hoarsely. "You loved the roses, especially the yellow ones by the fountain." His voice cracked slightly. "You used to pick the petals and make perfume in those little teacups from your dollhouse." Scarlett's eyes filled with tears as the memory surfaced from the depths of her buried childhood. "Princess Sarah's magical potion," she whispered. "You said it would make me brave enough to fight dragons. That did it." Cameron Sterling, the man who had built a financial empire through sheer determination and ruthless business acumen, completely broke down. He pulled her into his arms without thinking, holding her against his chest as if she might disappear again. His expensive cologne mixed with her simple vanilla body spray, creating an oddly perfect combination. "I never stopped looking," he murmured into her golden hair. 25 years, Sarah. I hired the best private investigators money could buy. I followed every lead, every whisper, every false hope. I was starting to think." His voice broke completely. "I'm here," she whispered back, feeling safe for the first time in her adult life. "I'm really here, Cameron." They stood there in the hallway, two siblings reunited against impossible odds until the sound of approaching footsteps forced them apart. Cameron quickly composed himself, though his eyes remained suspiciously bright. "My office," he said, his voice still rough with emotion. "We need to talk properly." Scarlett glanced nervously at her abandoned cleaning cart. "I should finish my rounds. Mrs. Patterson will have my job if—" "Mrs. Patterson works for me," Cameron said firmly. Then his expression softened. "You're never cleaning another office, Sarah. That part of your life is over." The massive mahogany doors opened to reveal Cameron's private sanctuary, a space that screamed power and sophistication. Persian rugs covered gleaming hardwood floors. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, and a bar cart stocked with bottles worth more than Scarlett's rent sat in one corner. The morning sun streamed through panoramic windows that offered a breathtaking view of Central Park. "Coffee?" Cameron asked, moving toward an espresso machine that probably cost more than her car. I don't usually drink coffee," Scarlett admitted, feeling completely out of place among the luxury. Maybe just water? He paused, studying her with those piercing green eyes. You're nervous. Terrified, actually, she said with a shaky laugh. 3 hours ago I was worried about making rent this month. Now I'm in a billionaire's office being told I'm his long-lost sister. It's a lot to process. Cameron's expression darkened slightly. You've been struggling financially? I work 3 jobs, she said simply. Cleaning here at night, waitressing at Luigi's diner during lunch shifts, and I do data entry on weekends. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. 3 jobs, he repeated slowly, and she could see anger building behind his eyes, not at her, but at the circumstances that had kept them apart. While I've been living in a penthouse and flying around in private jets, you've been working yourself to death just to survive. It's not your fault, Scarlett said quickly. You didn't know. It is my fault. Cameron slammed his hand on the desk, making her jump. I should have found you sooner. I should have dug deeper, should have... Cameron. She stepped closer, placing a small hand on his arm. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through both of them, something that felt like recognition on a level deeper than siblings. You were 7 years old when they separated us. You were a child too. He looked down at her hand on his arm, something shifting in his expression. For a moment, the air between them crackled with an energy that was decidedly unsibling-like. Then he cleared his throat and stepped back. Tell me about your life, he said, settling into the leather chair behind his desk while gesturing for her to take the seat across from him. Everything. I want to know it all. For the next hour, Scarlett found herself opening up to this stranger who was somehow the most familiar person in the world. She told him about the foster homes, some kind and others less so, about the Brooks family who had eventually adopted her when she was 12, giving her their name and their love, about working her way through community college with scholarships and part-time jobs, about her tiny apartment in Queens that she shared with her best friend Riley. You went to college, Cameron said with obvious pride. What did you study? Business administration, she replied, then laughed at his surprised expression. I know, weird choice for someone who cleans offices for a living. But I've always been fascinated by how companies work, how deals are made. Sometimes when I'm cleaning the conference rooms, I read the whiteboards and try to understand the strategies. Cameron leaned forward, intrigued. And do you understand them? Scarlett blushed prettily. Usually, yes. Last week there was a merger proposal left on the table in conference room B. The numbers didn't add up. They were undervaluing the target company's intellectual property portfolio by at least 30%. Conference room B, Cameron repeated slowly. The Henderson Industries acquisition? I think that was the name, yes. The projections seemed off and they weren't accounting for the patent renewals coming up in Q4, Cameron finished, staring at her in amazement. You're absolutely right. My team missed that completely. We're restructuring the entire deal because of that oversight. They looked at each other across the polished desk, both realizing that Scarlett wasn't just his long-lost sister. She was brilliant, street-smart, and business-savvy in ways that no amount of Ivy League education could teach. I have a proposition, Cameron said suddenly, his CEO persona sliding back into place. I want you to work here, officially. As what? I already clean your offices. As my personal assistant, he said firmly. You'll learn the business from the ground up. I'll teach you everything I know. Scarlett's eyes widened. Cameron, I can't just... The salary is $200,000 a year to start, he continued smoothly. Plus benefits, plus a signing bonus to get you out of that Queens apartment and into somewhere appropriate. $200,000? She gasped. That's more than I make in 5 years. It's a fraction of what you're worth, Cameron said seriously. Sarah, you have a gift. That analysis you just gave me would have taken my team weeks to figure out, and you saw it while emptying trash cans. Before she could respond, his intercom buzzed. Mr. Sterling, your 9 o'clock is here early. The Japanese investors. Cameron's jaw tightened. Tell them I'll be right there. He looked at Scarlett apologetically. I have to take this meeting. It's been in the works for months. Of course, she said, starting to rise. I should go anyway. This is all so overwhelming. Have dinner with me tonight, he said quickly, then paused at his own words. Something flickered in his green eyes that made her pulse skip. I mean, we have so much more to talk about. Family stuff. I want to hear more about your life. And I want to tell you about ours. About our parents. About what really happened that night. Okay, she whispered, suddenly feeling like she was agreeing to much more than just dinner. 8 o'clock. I'll pick you up. He scribbled an address on a piece of paper. This is my driver, Marcus. He'll take you home and bring you back tonight. And Scarlett? She paused at the door, looking back at him. Wear something nice. We're going somewhere special. As she left his office, both of them were thinking the same dangerous thought. Family dinners weren't supposed to feel like dates. And siblings definitely weren't supposed to make each other's hearts race the way theirs just had. The line between family love and something much more complicated was already beginning to blur, and neither of them had any idea how to stop it. Scarlett stared at her reflection in the tiny bathroom mirror of her queen's apartment, hardly recognizing the woman looking back at her. The black cocktail dress she'd borrowed from her roommate Riley hugged her curves in all the right places. And for the first time in years, she'd splurged on professional makeup at a department store counter. Her golden hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and her blue eyes sparkled with a mixture of excitement and terror. You look like you're going to seduce a billionaire, not have dinner with your long-lost brother, Riley commented from the doorway, her arms crossed and her expression concerned. It's not like that, Scarlett protested, but her cheeks flushed pink, betraying her inner turmoil. We're family. We're just catching up. Honey, I've seen the way you talk about this man for 3 years, Riley said gently. Even before you knew who he was, you had a crush on Cameron Sterling. Those feelings don't just disappear because you found out you're related. We're not related by blood, Scarlett whispered, then immediately looked horrified at her own words. I mean, we are. We're siblings. I didn't mean… Scarlett. Riley sat on the bed, patting the space beside her. Sit down for a minute. Reluctantly, Scarlett perched on the edge of the bed, careful not to wrinkle her dress. What do you actually remember about your childhood? Riley asked quietly. Real memories, not just what the social workers told you. Scarlett was quiet for a long moment. Fragments, mostly. A big house. A boy who was kind to me. But Riley, the DNA test results were in my adoption file. We share the same parents. Or, Riley said carefully, you shared the same house. Rich families sometimes take in other children. Cousins, family friends' kids, even unrelated children they're helping. The 1990s were different. Records were messier. Before Scarlett could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Marcus is downstairs, take your time. See. He's here, she whispered, her heart racing. Just be careful, Riley said, hugging her friend. Whether he's your brother or not, Cameron Sterling is a powerful man who's used to getting what he wants. Don't let yourself get swept away. The Mercedes that waited downstairs was worth more than Scarlett's entire neighborhood. Marcus, the driver, was a distinguished black man in his 50s who greeted her with genuine warmth. Miss Sarah, he said, opening the door for her. Mr. Cameron has told me so much about you. I've been with the family for 15 years, and I've never seen him this happy. He talks about me? Scarlett asked as they glided through Manhattan traffic. Non-stop, Marcus chuckled. Ever since this morning, it's been Sarah this and Sarah that. He's had the household staff preparing for your arrival like we're expecting royalty. Scarlett's stomach fluttered. Household staff? Oh yes, miss. Mr. Cameron wants everything perfect for you. He's been planning this dinner all day. Called his chef, had flowers delivered, even bought a new suit. Marcus glanced at her through the rearview mirror. In 15 years, I've never seen him care so much about impressing anyone. The restaurant was Le Bernardin, one of the most exclusive establishments in the city. As they pulled up to the entrance, Scarlett saw Cameron waiting outside, and her breath caught in her throat. He wore a midnight blue suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean frame, his dark hair perfectly styled, and his green eyes scanning the street until they found her. When their eyes met through the car window, the world seemed to stop. Cameron opened her door personally, extending his hand to help her out. The moment their skin touched, electricity shot up her arm, and from the way his breath caught, she knew he felt it too. "You look," he started, then stopped, his usual eloquence completely deserting him. "Sarah, you're absolutely stunning." "Thank you," she whispered, suddenly shy. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He offered her his arm, and they walked into the restaurant together. The maitre d' immediately recognized Cameron and led them to a private corner table with a view of the city lights. Other diners turned to look at them, the powerful billionaire and the mysterious blonde who had captured his attention. "Have you ever been somewhere like this?" Cameron asked as they were seated. "Are you kidding?" Scarlett laughed, looking around at the crystal chandeliers and pristine white tablecloths. "The fanciest place I've ever eaten is the Olive Garden, and that was for my roommate's birthday." Cameron's expression grew serious. "I want to change that. I want to give you everything I couldn't give you for the past 25 years. "Cameron," she said softly, "you don't owe me anything. We were both victims of what happened." "Tell me about that night," he said suddenly. "What do you remember about the accident?" Scarlett frowned, trying to access memories that felt more like fragments of dreams. There was so much chaos. Shouting, sirens, bright lights. I remember being in a car, but not the accident itself. And then I was in a hospital, and a woman I'd never seen before was telling me that my family was gone and I was going to live somewhere new. "That woman lied to you," Cameron said, his jaw tightening. "Our parents didn't die that night, Sarah. They were arrested." "Arrested?" The wine glass slipped in her hand and Cameron quickly steadied it. "Financial fraud, securities violations. The Sterling Empire was built on stolen money, and when it all came crashing down, they made a deal with the prosecutors. They gave up everything, the house, the money, their children, in exchange for reduced sentences." Scarlett stared at him in shock. "They chose prison over us?" "They chose each other," Cameron said bitterly. "The social workers separated us because they thought it would be easier for us to be adopted individually. I was 7, old enough to remember everything. You were barely 2, young enough to start over with a clean slate. But you weren't adopted," she realized. "I was too angry, too damaged. I went through 17 foster homes before I aged out of the system at 18. His voice was matter of fact, but she could see the pain in his eyes. "I built Sterling Financial from nothing. Every dollar, every deal, every success, it was also I'd have the resources to find you." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Cameron, I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me," he said quickly, reaching across the table to wipe away her tears with his thumb. The gesture was tender, intimate, and completely inappropriate between siblings. "I'm telling you because I want you to understand. You're not just my sister, Sarah. You're the reason I became who I am." The waiter appeared to take their order, breaking the intensity of the moment. Cameron ordered for both of them in perfect French, and Scarlett found herself studying his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyes crinkled slightly when he smiled. "You learned French," she observed when the waiter left. "Among other things. I educated myself. Business, languages, culture. I figured if I was going to find you, I needed to be worthy of being your brother." "You were always worthy," she said softly. They ate in comfortable conversation, sharing stories and laughing at childhood memories that came flooding back. Cameron told her about building his company, his struggles and triumphs, while Scarlett shared stories about her adoptive family and her dreams of someday starting her own business. "What kind of business?" he asked, genuinely interested. "This might sound silly, but I've always wanted to open a bakery," she admitted. "My adoptive mother taught me to bake, and there's something magical about creating something that brings people joy. I used to dream about having a little shop with yellow curtains and the smell of fresh bread." That's not silly at all, Cameron said, his eyes lighting up. It's beautiful, and completely achievable now. Now? Sarah, you're a Sterling. Even if you choose not to take my name again, you're still family. What's mine is yours, always. After dinner, instead of taking her home, Cameron asked Marcus to drive them to Central Park. They walked along the moonlit paths, talking and laughing like old friends, rather than siblings meeting for the first time in decades. I used to come here when I was building the company, Cameron told her as they paused by the fountain. When deals fell through or investors rejected me, I'd walk these paths and imagine the day I'd find you. I'd picture bringing you here, showing you the view from my office, introducing you to my world. And now I'm here? Scarlett said, looking up at him. He was standing close, too close for siblings, and she could smell his cologne mixed with the crisp autumn air. Now you're here, he repeated, his voice dropping to a whisper. His eyes searched her face, lingering on her lips for a moment too long. They were leaning toward each other, drawn by an invisible force, when Scarlett's phone rang loudly, shattering the spell. She jumped back, fumbling for her phone with shaking hands. I should take this, she stammered, seeing Riley's name on the screen. Of course, Cameron said, but his voice was rough and she could see his hands clenching into fists at his sides. As she answered Riley's call, a perfectly timed intervention asking when she'd be home, both Scarlett and Cameron realized they were standing on very dangerous ground. The line between family love and romantic attraction was blurring so fast they could barely see it anymore. And the most terrifying part was that neither of them wanted to step back from the edge. 3 days had passed since their dinner at Le Bernardin, and Scarlett hadn't heard a word from Cameron. She'd called in sick to her cleaning job, unable to face the possibility of running into him in the hallways of Sterling Financial. The memory of their almost kiss played on repeat in her mind, making her cheeks burn with shame and confusion. She was curled up on her couch in Queens wearing pajamas and eating ice cream straight from the container, when Riley burst through the door with her laptop and a determined expression. Okay, enough moping, Riley announced, setting her computer on the coffee table. We're getting to the bottom of this family mystery once and for all. Riley, I don't want to... Scarlett Brooks, you've been crying for 3 days over a man you think is your brother. This isn't healthy, and frankly, it's not normal. Riley opened her laptop and pulled up a genealogy website. Something doesn't add up about this whole story, and I'm going to prove it. Despite herself, Scarlett found herself leaning forward as Riley navigated through public records, news articles, and legal documents from the 1990s. Look at this, Riley said, pointing to a newspaper article from 1998. The Sterling financial scandal. Thomas and Victoria Sterling were arrested for securities fraud, but look at this photo of their family. Scarlett squinted at the grainy black and white image. There was 7-year-old Cameron, unmistakably handsome even as a child, standing next to a tall man and an elegant woman. But there was no little blonde girl in the picture. Maybe I wasn't in the photo that day, Scarlett said weakly. Or maybe, Riley continued, clicking through more articles. You were never a Sterling to begin with. She pulled up another document. Here's the thing. I found the social services records. They're public domain after 30 years. Cameron Sterling was placed in foster care in October 1998, but there's no record of a Sarah Sterling in the system. Scarlett's heart began to race. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe you lived in the Sterling house, but you weren't their biological daughter. Riley's fingers flew across the keyboard. Rich families in the 90s often took in children informally. Relatives' kids, family friends who died, even charity cases. It wasn't uncommon. But the DNA test? What DNA test? Riley asked sharply. You said there was a DNA test in your adoption files, but I've never seen it. Have you? Scarlett frowned, trying to remember. The social worker mentioned it, and I just assumed. Honey, you were 2 years old and traumatized. You believed what they told you. Riley pulled up another screen. Look, I found employment records for the Sterling household. They had a live-in nanny named Margaret Brooks. Brooks, Scarlett. Same last name as your adoptive family. That's just a coincidence, Scarlett whispered, but her world was tilting on its axis. Is it? What if Margaret Brooks was your biological mother? What if she worked for the Sterlings and brought you to live there? When the scandal broke and the family fell apart, what if she arranged for her relatives, the Brooks family in Queens, to adopt you? Scarlett stared at the computer screen, her mind racing. Fragments of memories began to shift and rearrange themselves like pieces of a puzzle. The big house, yes, but not as a daughter, as the nanny's child. Cameron being kind to her, not as a brother, but as the sweet older boy who played with the help's daughter. Oh my God, she breathed. Riley, if you're right, there's only one way to find out for sure, Riley said gently. You need to talk to Cameron. Tell him what we found and ask him to remember, really remember, who you were in that house. An hour later, Scarlett stood outside the Sterling Financial Building, her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd called Cameron's office, but his assistant said he was in back-to-back meetings all day. So she waited in the lobby, drawing curious stares from employees who recognized her as the cleaning lady who'd mysteriously disappeared. At 6:30, Cameron emerged from the executive elevator looking exhausted and rumpled. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie loosened, and there were dark circles under his green eyes. When he saw her sitting in the lobby, he stopped dead in his tracks. Sarah, he said, and something in his voice told her he'd been as tormented as she had. We need to talk, she said, standing up. Really talk. He nodded wordlessly and led her back up to his office. The space felt different now, charged with tension and unspoken questions. Cameron poured himself a scotch with shaking hands. I've been thinking about the other night, he said without looking at her. About what almost happened. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. You're my sister, and What if I'm not? She interrupted quietly. Cameron's glass stopped halfway to his lips. What? What if I'm not your sister, Cameron? She moved closer to him, her blue eyes searching his face. Think back. Really think. Who was I in that house? You were my little sister, he said automatically, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Was I? Or was I the nanny's daughter who lived there too? Scarlett pulled out her phone and showed him the research Riley had done. Margaret Brooks worked for your family. Same last name as the people who adopted me. No record of a Sarah Sterling in the foster system. No DNA test in my files. Cameron sank into his chair, staring at the evidence. Margaret, he whispered. I remember Margaret. She was wonderful, kind and patient. His eyes widened. She had a little girl, a blonde little girl who lived in the servants' quarters but played in the main house during the day. That little girl was me, Scarlett said softly. Not your sister. Just a child whose mother worked for your family. But you called me Cameron when you were little, he said desperately, as if trying to hold on to the family connection. Because that's what Margaret taught me to call you. You were the young master of the house. Scarlett sat on the edge of his desk, close enough to touch. Cameron, we're not related by blood, we never were. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. If they weren't siblings, then everything changed. The attraction, the almost kiss, the way they made each other's hearts race. None of it was wrong or forbidden. You're sure? Cameron asked hoarsely. I'm sure, she whispered. He stood up slowly, moving to stand directly in front of her. This close, she could see the gold flecks in his green eyes, could smell his cologne, could feel the heat radiating from his body. Sarah, he said softly, reaching up to cup her face in his hands. If we're not family, then what we're feeling isn't wrong, she finished, her voice barely audible. I've been going crazy for 3 days, he confessed, his thumb stroking her cheekbones. Trying to convince myself that what I feel for you is brotherly love, but knowing in my heart it's so much more. Cameron, she breathed, and this time when he leaned down to kiss her, nothing interrupted them. His lips met hers softly at first, tentatively, as if he couldn't quite believe this was really happening. Then she melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt, and the kiss deepened into something hungry and desperate and full of 3 days' worth of denied longing. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I've been falling in love with you since the moment I saw you in that hallway," Cameron confessed against her lips, "and I hated myself for it because I thought—" "I know," she whispered. "I felt it too. The guilt was eating me alive." "No more guilt," he said firmly, pulling her closer. "No more pretending. Sarah Brooks, I am completely and utterly in love with you, and I don't care who knows it. Even though I'm just a cleaning lady from Queens? You're not just anything," he said fiercely. "You're brilliant and beautiful and kind, and you have a heart of gold. You're everything I've been looking for my entire life." As they kissed again, deeper and more passionately this time, both of them felt the weight of deception lifting from their shoulders. They weren't siblings torn apart by forbidden love. They were two people who had found each other against all odds, whose childhood connection had blossomed into something beautiful and real. The truth had set them free, and now their real love story could finally begin. 2 weeks had passed since their first kiss, and Scarlett felt like she was living in a fairy tale. Cameron had insisted she move out of her Queens apartment and into a beautiful penthouse suite in his building. "Separate floors for propriety," he'd said with a wink, though he spent most evenings in her suite anyway, teaching her about wine, art, and the intricacies of high society. She'd started working as his personal assistant, and to everyone's surprise, she was brilliant at it. Her natural intuition for people and her street-smart business sense made her invaluable in negotiations. She could read a room like a book and often spotted problems in contracts that Cameron's Harvard-educated lawyers missed. But tonight was different. Tonight was the Sterling Financial Annual Charity Gala, and for the first time, Scarlett would be attending as Cameron's official girlfriend, not his assistant. "I can't do this," she said for the 10th time, staring at herself in the full-length mirror of her walk-in closet. The emerald green silk gown Cameron had bought her probably cost more than her old annual salary, and the jewelry, real diamonds and emeralds, made her feel like she was playing dress-up. "You look like a goddess," Cameron said from the doorway, devastatingly handsome in his custom tuxedo. He moved behind her, placing his hands on her bare shoulders and meeting her eyes in the mirror. "Every man in that ballroom is going to hate me for having the most beautiful woman in New York on my arm. Cameron, these people are going to eat me alive," she whispered, leaning back against his solid chest. "I'm a high school graduate from Queens dating a billionaire. The press will have a field day." "Let them talk," he said firmly, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I love you, Sarah Brooks. I love your kind heart, your brilliant mind, and the way you make me laugh. If anyone has a problem with that, they can answer to me." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Riley. "Just saw the gossip blogs. Mystery woman captures Sterling's heart. They're calling you Cinderella. Go get 'em, babe." Scarlett showed Cameron the text and he laughed. "Cinderella, huh? I like that. Though technically you captured my heart long before any glass slippers were involved." The ballroom at the Plaza Hotel was a vision of elegance and wealth. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over women dripping in diamonds and men whose net worth could fund small countries. Scarlett felt every eye in the room turn toward them as they made their entrance, Cameron's hand protectively on the small of her back. "Sterling," a booming voice called out, and a distinguished man in his 60s approached with a much younger woman on his arm. "You must introduce us to your lovely companion." "Richard Blackwood, this is Scarlett Brooks," Cameron said smoothly. "Scarlett, Richard owns half the hotels in Manhattan." "Pleasure to meet you," Scarlett said, extending her hand with the grace Cameron had been teaching her. Brooks, Richard mused. "Any relation to the Brooks Hotel family?" "No, sir. My family is in the service industry," Scarlett replied honestly, and Cameron's grip on her waist tightened supportively. Richard's wife, a plastic surgery masterpiece named Tiffany, looked Scarlett up and down with barely concealed disdain. "How refreshing. Cameron, we were all wondering when you'd find someone from a more suitable background." Actually, Cameron said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge, Scarlett has been invaluable to Sterling Financial. She spotted a problem in the Henderson merger that saved us $30 million. I'd say that makes her more than suitable. Before the conversation could turn more uncomfortable, a stunning redhead in a silver gown appeared at Cameron's elbow. Victoria Ashford, old money, high society, and Cameron's ex-girlfriend of 2 years. Cameron, darling, Victoria purred, completely ignoring Scarlett. I've been hoping to run into you. Daddy's been asking about that real estate deal you discussed. Victoria, Cameron said coolly, I'd like you to meet my girlfriend, Scarlett Brooks. Victoria's green eyes assessed Scarlett like a cat eyeing a mouse. Oh yes, the cleaning lady. How progressive of you, Cameron. I'm sure it's just a phase. Scarlett felt her cheeks burn, but before she could respond, Cameron stepped forward, his entire demeanor shifting from charming to lethal. Let me be very clear, he said quietly, but his voice carried enough menace to make several nearby conversations stop. Scarlett is the woman I love, and she will be treated with respect. If you can't manage that, Victoria, I suggest you find somewhere else to socialize. Victoria's face went white, then red. She'd never seen Cameron defend anyone so fiercely, and the implication was clear. Scarlett wasn't just a fling. Of course, Victoria said stiffly. I meant no offense. Enjoy your evening. As she walked away, Scarlett felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. Cameron had just publicly chosen her over Manhattan royalty, but she could see the whispers starting, the pointed looks and raised eyebrows. Dance with me, Cameron said suddenly, leading her toward the dance floor as the orchestra began a waltz. In his arms, swaying to the music under the glittering chandeliers, Scarlett felt like she was in a dream. Cameron was an excellent dancer, leading her effortlessly across the floor, and for a moment she forgot about the stares and whispers. You're thinking too loud, he murmured against her ear. I don't belong here, Cameron, she whispered back. These people see right through me. You belong wherever I am, he said firmly. And in case you haven't noticed, you're handling yourself beautifully. You've been more gracious and dignified than half the people in this room. As if to prove his point, an elderly woman tapped Cameron on the shoulder. Excuse me, young man. I'm Eleanor Vanderbilt, and I simply must steal your girlfriend for a moment. Cameron reluctantly released Scarlett, who found herself face to face with one of New York's most respected philanthropists. My dear, Eleanor said kindly, I've been watching you all evening. You have something these other girls lack, authenticity. Tell me, what cause are you passionate about? Education, Scarlett replied without hesitation. I believe every child deserves access to quality education, regardless of their background. Eleanor's eyes lit up. Wonderful. I've been looking for someone to head up our new scholarship program for underprivileged children. Would you be interested in learning more? As Scarlett found herself in deep conversation about education reform with one of the city's most influential women, Cameron watched from across the room with pride swelling in his chest. She was brilliant, compassionate, and completely unaware of how she was charming everyone she met with her genuine warmth. She's remarkable, said a voice beside him. He turned to see his business partner and closest friend, Marcus Wellington. I can see why you're smitten. I'm not smitten, Cameron protested. I'm completely head over heels in love. Good, Marcus laughed. It's about time. You've been married to your work for too long. Though I have to ask, are you prepared for the media circus that's about to descend on both of you? As if summoned by his words, a flash went off nearby. A photographer had caught Scarlett mid-laugh with Eleanor Vanderbilt, and Cameron knew that by morning, that photo would be on the front page of every gossip magazine in the city. Let them come, Cameron said firmly. I'm not hiding my relationship with Scarlett from anyone. Later that evening, as they rode home in the back of Cameron's Mercedes, Scarlett kicked off her heels and curled up against his side. That wasn't as terrible as I thought it would be, she admitted. You were perfect, Cameron said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Eleanor Vanderbilt wants to put you in charge of a multi-million-dollar scholarship program. 3 different charities asked for your contact information, and even Richard Blackwood apologized for his wife's rudeness. And Victoria looked like she wanted to push me off the balcony, Scarlett added with a laugh. Victoria is irrelevant, Cameron said firmly. You are my future, Scarlett. I hope you know that. She looked up at him, seeing something serious in his green eyes. Cameron, I know it's fast, he said quietly, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You're it for me, Scarlett Brooks. You're my heart, my soul, my everything. As their car pulled up to their building, Scarlett realized that she wasn't just falling in love with Cameron Sterling. She was falling in love with the life they were building together. A life where her background didn't matter, where her heart of gold was worth more than any trust fund, and where true love really could conquer all. The fairy tale was just beginning. 6 months later, the headlines were still buzzing about Manhattan's most unlikely love story. Cinderella CEO, from cleaning lady to sterling financial executive, read Forbes. The golden girl who captured the billionaire's heart, proclaimed Vanity Fair. But Scarlett barely noticed the media attention anymore. She was too busy living her fairy tale. The Sterling Financial boardroom buzzed with anticipation as Scarlett stood at the head of the mahogany conference table, presenting her proposal for the company's new charitable foundation. Her golden hair was pulled back in an elegant chignon, and she wore a navy blue power suit that commanded respect. Gone was the timid cleaning lady. In her place stood a confident businesswoman who had earned her position through sheer brilliance and determination. The Golden Heart Foundation will focus on educational scholarships for underprivileged children, she explained to the board of directors, her voice steady and authoritative. Our initial investment of $50 million will provide full scholarships to over 500 students annually. Cameron watched from his seat at the other end of the table, his green eyes shining with pride. In 6 months, Scarlett had transformed from his assistant to his business partner, bringing a humanity and compassion to Sterling Financial that had revolutionized their corporate culture. Outstanding proposal, Ms. Brooks, said board member Harrison Chen, an elderly man who had initially been skeptical of Cameron's cleaning lady girlfriend. Your passion project has my full support. After the meeting, Cameron found Scarlett in her office. Yes, her own corner office with a view of Central Park. She was standing by the window, still holding the proposal folder, a soft smile playing on her lips. Penny for your thoughts, he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. I was just thinking about that first morning when I found you in the hallway, she said, leaning back against his chest. If someone had told me then that 6 months later I'd be running a $50 million foundation, I would have believed it, Cameron murmured against her ear. You've always been extraordinary, Scarlett. The world just needed time to catch up. She turned in his arms, studying his handsome face. Are you happy? Really happy? Because I know this isn't the life you planned. Dating a former cleaning lady, dealing with all the media attention, having people constantly question your choices. Scarlett Brooks, he said firmly, cupping her face in his hands. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. You've made me a better man, a better CEO, and a better human being. The only thing that would make me happier is... He trailed off, suddenly looking nervous in a way she'd never seen before. Cameron, what is it? Instead of answering, he stepped back and dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. Scarlett's hands flew to her mouth as he opened it to reveal the most beautiful ring she'd ever seen. A stunning yellow diamond surrounded by smaller white diamonds, set in platinum. Scarlett Brooks, Cameron said, his voice trembling with emotion. 6 months ago, you walked into my life and turned everything upside down. You've shown me what real love feels like, what it means to have a partner who challenges me, supports me, and makes me want to be worthy of her every single day. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she stared at the man she loved more than life itself, kneeling in her office with all of Manhattan spread out behind him. I know I'm a complicated man with a complicated life, he continued. I know that marrying me means living in the spotlight, dealing with scrutiny, and navigating a world that doesn't always understand our love story. But I promise you this. I will spend every day of the rest of my life proving that you are the most precious thing in my world. He took a shaky breath. Scarlett Brooks, my golden girl, my heart, my soul, will you marry me? Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, of course, yes. Cameron slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, then stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her around the office as she laughed and cried at the same time. When he finally set her down, they were both grinning like teenagers. It's a yellow diamond, he explained, brushing tears from her cheeks. Like your hair, like sunshine, like the light you brought into my life. It's perfect, she breathed, admiring the way the stone caught the afternoon light. You're perfect. We're perfect together, he corrected, then kissed her with all the passion and love he'd been holding back. Their kiss was interrupted by a commotion outside her office. Through the glass walls, they could see Marcus and several other executives gathering, and suddenly the entire floor erupted in applause. Someone had clearly witnessed the proposal, and the news was spreading like wildfire through the building. Well, Scarlett laughed, I guess the secret's out. Good, Cameron said firmly, taking her hand and leading her out to face their colleagues. I want the whole world to know that Scarlett Brooks said yes. The celebration that followed was everything Scarlett had never dared to dream of. Champagne appeared from nowhere. Flowers were delivered by the dozen, and her phone buzzed constantly with congratulations from friends, colleagues, and even some of the high society women who had initially snubbed her. That evening, Cameron took her to the same spot in Central Park where they'd almost kissed 6 months ago. The fountain sparkled in the moonlight, and the city hummed with life around them. I have one more surprise, he said, pulling out his phone. Close your eyes. When she opened them, the fountain was illuminated with golden lights that spelled out, Scarlett plus Cameron forever. Her gasp of delight echoed across the water. How did you? I've been planning this for weeks, he admitted. I wanted everything to be perfect for you. Cameron, you don't have to give me elaborate gestures and expensive things, she said softly. You've already given me everything I ever wanted. What's that? Love. Real, honest, unconditional love. A partner who sees my worth, who encourages my dreams, who makes me feel like I can conquer the world. She touched his face gently. You've given me a fairy tale. But more than that, you've given me a real love story. As they kissed under the golden lights, with the city of New York twinkling around them like a million stars, both Scarlett and Cameron knew they had found something truly magical. Their love story had started with a secret and a case of mistaken identity, but it had grown into something beautiful and unbreakable. 1 year later, the wedding was the event of the decade. St. Patrick's Cathedral was filled with flowers, yellow roses and white peonies, just like Scarlett had always dreamed. The guest list included everyone from world leaders to Scarlett's old co-workers from the diner, because she had insisted that everyone who mattered to them should be there. Riley stood as maid of honor, tears of joy streaming down her face as she watched her best friend marry the love of her life. Marcus served as best man, and even Eleanor Vanderbilt was there, beaming proudly at the young woman who had become like a granddaughter to her. But the most touching moment came when Margaret Brooks, Scarlett's biological mother, whom they had tracked down and reunited with, walked her daughter down the aisle. The elderly woman who had once been the Sterling family's nanny was now watching her little girl marry the boy she used to care for, and there wasn't a dry eye in the cathedral. Scarlett was radiant in a princess gown that seemed to capture starlight in its folds, her golden hair crowned with a tiara that had belonged to Cameron's grandmother. Cameron looked devastatingly handsome in his custom tuxedo, but his eyes never left his bride's face. You may kiss your wife, the priest announced, and Cameron didn't need to be told twice. As they kissed, the cathedral erupted in applause, and Scarlett felt like her heart might burst with happiness. She had gone from being invisible to being loved by the most wonderful man in the world. She had found her family, her purpose, and her happily ever after. 5 years later, Scarlett Sterling stood in the nursery of their penthouse rocking their 6-month-old daughter, Hope, while watching her husband read a bedtime story to their 3-year-old son, Cameron Jr. The Golden Heart Foundation had grown into one of the most successful educational charities in the country, and Scarlett had been named one of Forbes's most powerful women for her humanitarian work. But all of that paled in comparison to this. Her family, her children, her husband who still looked at her like she hung the moon. And they lived happily ever after. Cameron finished the story, closing the book and looking up at his wife with the same love and adoration he'd shown her from day one. Just like us, little Cameron said sleepily. Just like us, Scarlett agreed, her heart full to overflowing. As they tucked their children into bed and retired to their own room, Cameron pulled his wife into his arms and danced with her to the soft music playing from their sound system, the same waltz they had danced to at their first charity gala. "Any regrets?" he asked softly, spinning her slowly in the moonlight streaming through their windows. "Only one," she said, smiling up at him. "What's that?" "I wish I could go back and tell that scared young woman in the cleaning uniform that sometimes fairy tales really do come true." Cameron kissed her forehead, her cheeks, and finally her lips. "She wouldn't have believed you anyway. She was too humble to imagine she deserved a prince." "Good thing her prince was smart enough to recognize a treasure when he saw one," Scarlett murmured against his lips. "The smartest thing I ever did was fall in love with you, Scarlett Sterling." And as they swayed together in their bedroom, surrounded by the life they had built together, both of them knew that their love story was far from over. It was still being written, one golden day at a time, and it would continue for the rest of their lives. After all, true love really does conquer all, especially when it's backed by a heart of gold. The end.